Every year, fantasy championships are won not just by the stars that you draft early, but by the backups that you stash smartly. Injuries, committees, surprise breakouts, they all turn second stringers into season savers. Today, we're breaking down 10 of the most important backup running backs that you need on your radar. These guys aren't just insurance, they're potential league winners. I'm Tom Strachan. You might have read my work on Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Sanctuary, though. Let's get into it. Tyler Allgeier deserves to be drafted higher. The gap between Allgeier and Bijan Robinson is the 8th biggest gap between an RB1 and an RB2. Currently, there are 15 different RB2s being drafted before Tyler Allgeier. Allgeier ranked 10th in explosive run rate in 2024 and ranked 7th in juke rate. Yes, Bijan Robinson is a spectacular player and very well could be the RB1 overall this year. That only furthers the case for why Allgeier is one of the best backup running backs out there. If something happened to Bijan Robinson, how high is Tyler Allgeier going to be ranked every week? It's pretty damn high. Not to mention, Allgeier's had solid standalone value as well. Over the last 2 years, he's had 6 RB3, that means top 36 weekly finishes in both of those seasons. Allgeier is easily one of my favourite stashes and a player that I want in Dynasty, Best Ball, Redraft, whatever the format, I want Tyler Allgeier. Ray Davis. Adam Schefter reported recently that the Bills and James Cook remained significantly apart in their contract valuations, and in Schefter's opinion, he didn't see a path to this being resolved anytime soon. Training camp tends to have an influence on these, and speed matters up, so if we're going to see something, it's likely coming in the next few weeks. But it was a good sign that James Cook was at mandatory mini camp. In his words, he likes money. But for now, it is giving people more reason to be bullish on Ray Davis heading into his sophomore campaign. Davis had 5 top 24 weekly finishes in 2024, caught 15 of his 16 targets last year. At a minimum, he could see that valuable part of his role grow. Among rookie running backs last year, Davis had the 3rd most touches with 113. It's noteworthy because the Bills under Sean McDermott, they don't tend to give rookies huge amount of workloads unless they're a real elite player. So those 113 touches, that was something that caught my eye, and I think Ray Davis is definitely worth stashing for 2025. Austin Ekeler. Let's start this one and get it out of the way with. I was out on Austin Ekeler last year. I thought he was washed. I don't think I was completely wrong. Like, Eckler's still hanging on in Washington, and he had some okay moments last year. I fully expected the Commanders to go out this offseason and try and upgrade on both Austin Ekeler and Brian Robinson, neither of who looked incredible last year. But so far, they've put all their resources elsewhere. There aren't many free agent running backs left of incredible value, and it'd be a bit strange to see the Commanders at this point go and trade for a running back. The reason I'm willing to change my mind on Ekeler, it's twofold. One, his receiving work was solid last year. He had the 12th most receiving yards among running backs with 366, despite ranking 31st in routes run. Ekeler also had the 7th highest target share among running backs at 11.4% and ranked 4th in yards per target at 8.93. Maybe he wasn't washed. Rico Dowdle. It was always going to be a tough market for running backs to thrive in, with the rookie class so widely expected to be one of the best running back classes that we've seen in years. So Rico Dowdle, when he hit free agency, he had to be disappointed that he didn't get a bigger opportunity than landing with the Panthers. Dowdle had been the clear best running back in Dallas last year, rushing for the 5th most rushing yards from week 10 onwards. Finished as a top 24 running back in half his games across the entire season last year. The Cowboys, though, they opted to sign Javonte Williams, who performed worse than Dowdle in a whole ton of different metrics. Ultimately, they gave Javonte a very similar deal to what Dowdle landed with the Panthers, which probably should have the Cowboys, given the choice, preferred Javonte. Dowdle now finds himself behind Chuba Hubbard, who the Panthers seem to be locked in on as their RB1. They extended him recently. But if anything happens to Chuba, we've seen Dowdle be relevant before, and he could easily be so on this ascending offense in Carolina that's got a sneaky good run block line. Jordan Mason. The Vikings, they were draft capital poor this offseason. They didn't have a lot of picks, but what they decided to do was trade away one of those to get Jordan Mason rather than run the gauntlet of the draft and take dart throws at rookies. Mason forced missed tackles at the 6th highest rate among running backs last year, as well as having the 7th highest yards per carry on zone concept runs. That's important because that's something the Vikings lean heavily into. Aaron Jones, he's played 17 games in 2 of the last 3 seasons, but he's one of those players who consistently seems to be getting banged up and missing drives, coming out of the game for a little bit. He hit the 20 touch mark only twice in his last 5 games of 2024. And Mason is fast becoming a name who people are expecting to be a fantasy football sleeper this year. If he rises up too much further in ADP, I'd possibly start to be a bit hesitant, but it's really difficult not to imagine his upside and not to imagine him potentially having a good goal line role. Marshawn Lloyd. Last year we saw Josh Jacobs become the entire Green Bay Packers offense with their passing game just completely regressing. Green Bay, they passed the ball at the 3rd lowest rate last year, 49.3%, and perhaps they do want to change that with the arrival of Matthew Golden. But it's clear that the ground game will still be an important part of the game. Jacobs averaged 20.6 touches per game last year, and after the Week 10 bye, he never saw fewer than 17 in a game. But the Packers, they were definitely looking for answers with somebody to come in and take some of the workload away from Jacobs. We saw Emmanuel Wilson and Christopher Brooks both mix in. They had 117 rush attempts combined between them. That's where Marshawn Lloyd can come in this year. And Lloyd, he had a nightmare rookie season last year. He had a hamstring strain in training camp, then an ankle sprain in September, before in November being diagnosed with appendicitis and having to have an emergency appendectomy. That knocked him out for the rest of his rookie year. We don't know how good Lloyd can be in the NFL, but last year the team really liked him. All the buzz out of training camp was really positive, and he's the clear running back 2 on a team that we know loves to run the ball. That's worth taking shots at. Zach Charbonnet. Last year, Zach Charbonnet had 4 games where he touched the ball 15 or more times. In 3 of those, he finished as a top 8 running back that week and scored 17.9 PPR points, 25.7, and 38.3 in Week 14 when he was the RB1 overall. Charbonnet also ranked 12th in yards per target, 7.39, and had the 4th highest catch rate among running backs with 25 plus targets at 91.3%. That is the kind of thing that new quarterback Sam Darnold will absolutely love. Last year, we saw Dowdle absolutely pepper Aaron Jones with 59 targets, the 8th most among running backs. And both Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet should expect plenty of targets this year. We've seen Charbonnet thrive when given the opportunity, and the signs are that the Seahawks are going to be more run-heavy this year, potentially giving Charbonnet standalone value, as well as that massive contingent value if anything happened to Kenneth Walker. Will Shipley, by now, if you haven't heard the conversation surrounding running backs coming off 400 plus touches, you might be one of the lucky few people out there. It's been a hot topic, and there is a big history of running backs coming off either 400 plus touches or rushing for 1,500 yards, and then failing to live up to expectations for next year. This is all used as evidence for why Saquon Barkley might be a disappointment at his cost this year, and if that's the case, then Will Shipley, who's the clear RB2 in Philadelphia, could potentially be a value. There's only A.J. Dillon behind him, who missed the entirety of the 2024 season with a neck injury, and it's been a while since A.J. Dillon looked particularly good. We haven't seen very much from Shipley himself, outside of garbage time in the playoffs when he had runs of 16 yards and 57 yards against the Commanders. But clearly, the Eagles liked him enough to be okay losing Kenneth Gainwell in free agency. Rachaad White. Look, I know everyone loves Bucky Irving. I do too. He was awesome in 2024. But let's not forget about Rachaad White, because what White does well is one of the most important parts of fantasy football: catching the ball. White earned the 9th most targets last year at 56, tied with Devin Achane for the most receiving touchdowns at 6. White also ranked 2nd in design target rate of 44.6%. The Bucs, they loved throwing screens, and they love throwing them to White. Obviously, we've got a new offensive coordinator coming in at the Bucs, but I don't think they're going to look at what they did with Rachaad White last year and tear it up and give every single thing to Bucky instead. We also should mention that White has actually become a more efficient runner over the course of his 3 seasons in the NFL. Last year, he had career highs in success rate at 50.7% and yards per carry at 4.3. The Bucs, they seem absolutely committed to Bucky Irving, and fair enough, but let's not ignore the standalone and contingent value of Rachaad White, who's been a great fantasy asset before and could easily be so again. Roschon Johnson, one of the biggest rises in ADP this offseason has been Roschon Johnson, whose rise in ADP is down to the pre-draft assumption that the Bears would be probably aggressively targeting a running back. Now that we're on this side of the draft and the Bears are left with a running back room of Roschon Johnson, and DeAndre Swift. People can't help but dream of a Ben Johnson-led offense benefiting Johnson this year. You go back and you can think Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, and obviously the talent level isn't anywhere near that. Could Johnson perhaps be the David Montgomery goal line back? Maybe. Johnson, he failed to score more than 14.5 PPR points in any game last year. So look, there's not a lot of evidence to go on. But where he goes in drafts, it's a very fair price for a running back too, particularly when DeAndre Swift just has this habit of making himself less popular as the season goes on. As the veteran RBs continue to sign elsewhere, we're seeing Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins sign in different backfields. This looks more and more like a two-headed committee. Those are the 10 most important backup running backs. Let me know which one of these guys you're drafting. Let me know which guys I've missed in the comments down below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to get you set up to win big in 2025.